Just a few technical reminding notes before we get started. If you experience any issues with your audio or video during the conference, just refresh your browser and that should take care of everything. If you have any questions for our speakers or panel members, please do feel free to post your questions on the video wall, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. We will share with our speaker at the end of the session, and they will reply to you through the video wall or through the email afterwards. If you'd like to connect with our speakers, please move to the home lobby page. You can find the speaker by typing their names under Networking tab on the right-hand corner of your screen. We welcome all of our audience to interact with each other through our networking features. And also, please feel free to tag us on our social media handles with the hashtag AIMDigital. I would like to welcome you all to the Family Office virtual discussion. We're going to hear from experts and heads of family offices on their investment strategies and how different are the investment strategies applied by the NextGen. Handing over to you now, Peter.
It is my tremendous honor to chair this special Entrepreneurs and Business Leadership Fireside One-on-One discussion for AIM Congress 2020. I'm Peter J R Aylwin, Director of Aetos Holdings, and our special guest of honor today is Mr. Niranjan Hiranandani. In this exclusive interview, we're going to discuss his entrepreneurial journey, lessons learned from success and failure, thoughts on what it takes to be a leader and entrepreneur today, gain an insight into his principles of success and what he perceives is a step-by-step action plan that you can implement for your own success going forward in your business, leadership, and life journey. Mr. Niranjan Hiranandani is a co-founder and managing director of Hiranandani Group of Companies, a leader in quality constructions and real estate development. He also heads a distinct business unit, Hiranandani Communities. Amongst many accomplishments during his amazing career, he is known as the builder extraordinaire and a man responsible for changing the skyline of Mumbai with the delivery of the landmark project, Hiranandani Gardens. He pioneered the concept of developing mixed-use integrated townships as a model with a vibrant community living its reason for existence. He is president of ASSOCHAM, which is the Associated Chambers of Commerce and Industry, and many other distinguished industry groups. As a philanthropist, he has made a social commitment as a responsible citizen of the nation of India, being a trustee of 14 colleges and 6 schools under Hyderabad Sindh National Collegiate and many other philanthropic initiatives. Mr. Hiranandani, welcome to AIM Congress 2020.
Thank you very much for inviting me. My pleasure.
Indeed, it's my honor as well. Look, it's always intriguing and exciting to understand one's entrepreneurial journey and someone's path of success. People often see the end result, but they don't see the struggle and the journey. What was it like for you as a child and teen growing up? What type of classmate, brother, son, and friend were you in your circle of family and friends? And were there any early signs of an entrepreneur from a young age? Or was there some sort of turning point or moment of necessity which brought this drive and skill as an entrepreneur out of you?
Well, long story, but long and short of it is that I came from a medical family. My father was a doctor, my mother a housewife, my elder brother a doctor, my sister-in-law a doctor. There were no businessmen or anybody in the horizon who had anything to do with business in my family. So I was the strange one in that respect. And I had some good education in a good school in Mumbai, a good college education on the commerce side. I stayed away from the medical profession, partly because I was too scared of the hard work which my father and brother did. And I thought the easy way out would be to do commerce. And I did my chartered accountancy. And then later on, I even lectured in the Institute of Chartered Accountants and did a stint of teaching. But always looked up on the commerce side to businessmen in India. And I had a good close relationship with many of my father's patients who were leaders in terms of commerce and industry. Mr. Ghanshyam Das Birla, Mr. Aditya Birla, people from the Tata's group, the Motilal group, all were leading businessmen and industrialists over there. So I did a stint of apprenticeship and internship in their companies during my study of commerce during vacation time in order to get a feel of what business and industry was all about. Looked strange to me at that time, coming from a family of medical profession, and never had the idea of money being discussed too much on the dining table or in the house for any of the conversations. So when I did start talking about it, it sounded strange in the house of the family. We were three brothers, one doctor, the younger brother, and we decided to get and delve into business. So that's how we started with the textile unit, moved on to real estate, lost money in both. I had a problem deciding which one to give up. I had to give up one because of not enough money, not enough capital. And in those days, it wasn't easy to get capital or debt for the purposes of businesses in my time. And we really struggled. So we ultimately sold off textile unit. Strange decision because I didn't know which one to sell off. But I got a letter from the union of my labor union in my textile unit asking me for 100% increase in wages. They would have been happy with 10. But when I saw the letter, that was the kind of decision one made. And strangely, the union leader decided me to actually sell off my unit. And I did, and got into real estate in a full-fledged way, and then never looked back. So getting into business was, from a family point of view, a very far away thing, which was strange for everybody else. But somehow or the other, I guess I did have some entrepreneurial thoughts and vision, and started off very, very, very small. But over a period of time, incrementally grew the business in the real estate field. And of course, the rest is history.
Indeed it is. And often I've found many of us, whether it's by choice or by design, are the product of our many mentors. And you mentioned about this apprenticeship that you went through. Like, who were some of your mentors or people of major influence to you growing up and on your entrepreneurial path? And what lessons do you feel you learned that you could encapsulate for our webinar audience today?
I found mentors at different levels. Mentors in terms of whom you really look up to, but actually not get to know the nitty-gritties of what they are doing. But the fact that they are aspirational people, and there were lots and lots of them, including Mr. Tata, including Mr. Birla, including Mr. Mafatlal. All of them happened to be my father's friends. So it was easy, patience actually. And so I was able to interact with them, but actually didn't really get too far with them in terms of guidance or otherwise. But at the next level, there were lots and lots of people I looked up to in terms of mentorship. People who kind of ran these companies, had ideas of how the nitty-gritties things could do. So I think the internship and mentorship and apprenticeship that I did actually served me better. Rather than just looking up to people, it was more about associated with them in terms of the work side. And they really taught me a lot. And of course, in the real estate business, I had lots and lots of people whom I looked up to. There was the Makers family, there was the Raheja's family, there was the Lokhandwala's family. So there were lots of family members. And there I had lots of personal interaction with them and spent times having tea, having coffee, going out with them, trying to call them for lunches and dinners, and really picked up lots and lots of things from people who were far ahead of me at that point of time, and got lots of new ideas in terms of what to do. And I did pick up a lot of these people, looked up to them, mentors, got ideas from them, and worked on and did lots of new things. Lots of professionals also guided me well, whether they were architects, people say from finance, and over a period of time, let me tell you, I'm a good learner. So I kind of absorbed a lot of these ideas very quickly and tried to put them into practice. And fortunately, all these combinations in the long run worked. Of course, there were pitfalls, there were problems, there were downfalls, there were disasters. in some of the projects, but at the end, if you look at the long-term balance sheet, it's been good.
Yes, yes. We'll get into some of those lessons learned in a moment, but it's also said that one's consistent focus and habits help guide their journey and path to success. What does a typical day look like for you? Do you set goals and begin with the end in mind? Is there a morning, daily, or evening ritual or positive habits you practice for your mind, body, and spirit motivation? I mean, what does a typical day look like for you? And what is your path for success or recommendations there?
The first is to look after your health. I neglected it for the first many years, maybe first 15, 20 years of my life. And I was around 45 or so. And one day I went to my school, my alma mater, and my son had studied from that school. I was an old boy, and we did an old boys race. And when I ran that 20 meters of old boys race, I was panting. And I suddenly realized that in the last 15 years, I hadn't taken care of my health at all. And that was the beginning of a mind change that took place. So along with my work, I got back into improving my health. Today, I gym 3 days a week. I do yoga 2 days a week. I kind of run at least 5 kilometers once a week. And I've got my health back. You know, I mean, something which took me 10 to 15 years to put back into fiction. And today at 70, I can do a 10-kilometer run comfortably. So
and what about goal setting and affirmations? It's quite hot a topic now. Is meditation, yoga, goal setting, affirmations. Have you ever practiced anything of that nature?
Goal setting, yes. I think there are two parts to goal setting. It's a long-term goal setting, and there's a kind of goal setting for the day. I think both are equally important that you really need to do in terms of time management of yourself and give adequate time for different things. Just to share with you, I spend at least 35% of my daily time in not for business activities. So, and it's for the last 15 years so I have been doing that. So a lot of my work is not to do with business, it's to do with associations, it's to do with colleges, schools. I teach and I lecture to students. I'm passionate about it. I run hospitals. In our hospital in Mumbai, we have treated, as a private hospital, we have treated the largest number of COVID patients in Mumbai of any hospital in Mumbai. And we have now been given a new university in Mumbai in the last 12 months. And I'm starting a new university for 3 of my colleges, business activity. And for me, all of them are equally important. So, I mean, the focus only on business is not there. The focus on not for business is not there, but all of them kind of get an equal share in terms of attention and drive. And I think that's what makes a life complete in terms of giving it a purpose to live or work. And the more you do both, it makes a difference. So yes, you have to have goals clearly in your mind and that, but the problem is the goals keep changing. So every 2 years, the goal has completely changed. So sometimes the direction has changed. So let's give you an example. In the last 3 years, I never thought our company and corporates would get into diversifications. But in the last 3 years, we have changed from townships, for which our company is quite in leadership role in the country. We have now gone into industrial and warehousing logistics spaces. We have gone into data parks, data centers. My son is now focusing on gas pipelines and terminals and those parts of it. So a lot of diversification in the last couple of years, precipitated by opportunistic situations, my son wanting to do different new things for himself and direction to do. He built the second tallest residential tower in the world in Dubai, and he bases himself in Dubai. So
yes. We'll
so
get into the next generation in a moment.
A different thing. So yes. I think, yes, but I do find that a vision and goal setting, the goalpost keeps changing so rapidly, for me at least, that it's not easy to really talk about a long-term goals post, because if you meet me after 1 year, it's completely changed.
Indeed. Okay, and now for some of these next questions, let's because we've got a limited time, let's try and frame them within about a minute each, so you can give your most distilled takeaways for our distinguished audience. So another is, how do you define success, and what do you feel have been some of your greatest accomplishments?
Success in my mind is beating the normal, which means that each and every person has an X goal. You define a 2X goal and still go ahead of it. So that's success for me. If I match somebody else, that's not success. It means that's something which is very clear in my mind, that we really have to set goals in our minds which are going to be stronger and harder. And the more you learn to beat them, that's what makes a successful situation. And there is one more thing which I've learned. The reaching the goal is hardly the thing. The fun is actually driving towards it. So lots of people say, oh, I've achieved my goal. I hardly relish and celebrate that. I mean, I'm enjoying the pathways to reaching this goal, and I'm enjoying creating new goals and creating new pathways.
And that leads into the next question. I mean, it's said by many that you actually learn more from your failures and your challenges than your successes. What do you feel you've learned in moments of challenge, stress, or failure that you'll have to share with our audience today?
Difficult, because you have fallen so many times that it's always going to happen, and it's going to happen. But when it happens, it's not good for you, and obviously you feel upset at that point of time. But you got to you just pick yourself up and started moving again. So and it happened so many times that it's not funny. But people are getting used to the idea that even when you fall, it's not going to be a big problem for you. You're going to get back to action and set things right. And I think you make a part of your life. And any businessman who has set large goals, distant goals, will have failures in their life. So, just have to learning to get used to it, whether you use religion, whether you use your distractions to actually do it. In reality, none of them actually fulfill it, except that you're still marching on to the next one.
And it leads on to my next question, if we can sort of keep it within 1 minute. I mean, what do you feel it takes to be a true leader and entrepreneur today? And how has that potentially evolved since you started your entrepreneurial journey?
Depends on where you want to go. If you have goals which are incremental, you don't see that as a big struggle that you really need to go through. But if you have a visionary goal which is outstripping the entire market, and you want to challenge that situation, that's the kind of a goal which really makes it fantastic for an entrepreneur, because he or she is really looking at taking a leap, and many times leap in the dark, when doesn't know what the situation is going to be. But if you have a vision and a thought process which is clear in your mind, and you do believe in it, and you really do believe in it, it can happen. So it's up to you.
And when you're looking to pick the right partners, the right staff, and the right teams, how much of that is a formalized process, or testing the person in some way before hiring and engaging them? Or is it more about a gut instinct and intuition? If you could give maybe a 30 to 40 second summary of how you like to pick the right partners and people.
Yeah, I've done both and have found fault with both the processes. Nothing succeeds like success, even in the terms of what you're saying, of association and doing it. Some are opportunistic situations, some are times when you have reasoned it out and thought process. You can fail in both, you can succeed in both. So entrepreneur's failure and success doesn't necessarily depend on whether you have taken that the opportunistic part or otherwise. In many cases, we have taken the opportunistic role and succeeded tremendously. We have taken the structured thought process and failed. So I don't think there is any right way to do it. We have to try whatever looks good at that point of time.
If you could go back in time and speak to the young version of you that was starting out as an entrepreneur, because we've got many startups and early stage entrepreneurs dialing in today. What advice would you give yourself? What is that step-by-step guide, if you could distill it into 1 minute, of principles of success that you would love to share with them, and what you would advise yourself as an emerging entrepreneur?
One of the things I've learned over a period of time is to work yourself, to improve yourself every single day. One step at a time, keep improving. If you do that, whether it's in your construction, whether it's in your technology, whether it's in your reading, whether it's in your understanding of things, you continuously work on making improvements in whatever you're doing. Whatever products you're creating, whatever methodologies you're following, you have to make a determined effort that every day you take one step forward. And if you do that, by the end of the year, you have achieved so much that when you look back to the beginning of the year, you're astonished. Have I done so much? And in reality, you have. But you've really taken one step at all, only every single day. And people seem to just go backward and forward. But if you continue to work forward every day, one step, it works.
I couldn't agree more. And sage advice I received from my own father was similar to that, but also it's about having a good day every day, achieving those little goals. And at the conclusion of a year, you've accomplished a much greater deal than perhaps you would have without doing that, doing it so in such a way. And look, just to conclude, is there anything you feel is missing from the conversation, or final words of wisdom in roughly 1 minute you'd like to share with our audience today?
No, I don't think this. I think the world of I only wish I was younger, for the simple reason that the opportunities today are so much more and easier for people to do entrepreneurial activity, which were just not available to me when I was younger. So if I had to start again, I know for a fact that I would be able to start with much bigger platform and opportunity to do. So I would ask all the young people to take the steps into entrepreneurship with a drive and a passion, because it's so much easier to either get money or debt or whatever it is. If you have good ideas, vision, ability to work hard, there is so much opportunity to do. So just go for it.
There we are, ladies and gentlemen. Don't think about it too much. It does take action to implement and execute. Brilliant, brilliant insights here. Look, Mr. Hiranandani, it's certainly been a tremendous honor for myself. Our audience have obviously walked away with many pearls of wisdom from your insightful thoughts on entrepreneurship and leadership. And I'm sure our distinguished audience can't wait to go out into the real world now and take some of this sage advice and in execution. It's been a great pleasure from my side, ladies and gentlemen, and our distinguished audiences, and thank you very much. It is my tremendous honor to chair this distinguished panel for AIM Congress 2020. Our many distinguished participants of AIM Congress, comprising royalty and nobility, government ministries and diplomacy, trade and promotions agencies, large corporates, NGOs, SMEs, and many other respected members of the AIM community, have expressed a greater desire to understand and engage with family offices as an alternative investor, partner, or collaborator. The reason for this is in certain circumstances, larger institutional investors may not necessarily be the perfect fit. They may not have the same level of interest, consider the investment allocation too small, or are not able to foresee the benefits that experienced family offices believe is paramount and holds a solid growth trajectory. In our previous AIM copies and virtual roundtable webinars, we've covered important topics pertaining to this most unique category of private investor known as family office. And one is meant to build upon the other and upon the other. So I do encourage you to look at some of the other recordings of our AIM Congress discussions on family office, so you can gauge a much greater picture on the totality of this important investor sector. But some topics we included previously were what a family office is, the best manner of capturing their attention to attract their investment capital and collaboration, wealth preservation versus growth and entrepreneurship, investing into the future, the role of technology, investing during uncertain times of COVID-19, a very hot topic, which is direct investments and co-investments, and of course, social impact investments and philanthropy, and many other important areas. But due to substantial demand and curiosity from our many distinguished members of our audience today, our topic will be the next generation succession and transfer of family office wealth. One study has stated that there is a $30+ trillion transfer from one generation to the other on our horizon. And another is stating there's even a $60 trillion+ dollar transfer by 2060 from one generation to the next. This is a very important trend as next generation inheritors of ultra high net worth individuals and family offices comprise a large portion of this substantial wealth transfer and are much more tech savvy, ESG and social impact conscious than their elders, and in many ways see the world with a different perspective. Today, we will address how family offices perceive rapid changes in our world today. How are they planning their succession strategy for handing down their wealth in alignment with their values and objectives? And their perspectives on the next gen investment ideology in comparison to their own. But without further ado, it is my tremendous honor to introduce our distinguished panelists. Firstly, Mr. Niranjan Hiranandani, President of ASSOCHAM and co-founder and MD of Hiranandani Group of Companies, a single family office. Welcome, Mr. Hiranandani.
Thank you.
Mr. George Kanaan, who is Chief Executive Officer of the Arab Bankers Association based out of the United Kingdom, and a former single family office head and advisor, and present advisor to many single family offices and institutions. Welcome, Mr. Kanaan.
Thank you.
Mr. Shiraz Poonevala, who is the Director of Investments of the GP Group, a single family office, who's dialing in from Thailand. Welcome, Mr. Shiraz. And Seth Mersky, who is dialing in from Miami at this time, representing one of the preeminent law firms in structuring the succession of ultra high net worth individuals. Welcome, Seth. Look, to start this discussion, rather than me giving a detailed overview and introduction to all of you, I'm sure you can all do the same, do a much better job yourselves. And I'll just ask as well that you unmute yourselves. But in about 90 seconds, what was your background and focus prior to forming a family office? And what sector or investment activity led your family to evolve into its present vision, structure, and family office activities? Why don't we start with you, Shiraz?
So basically, I was a corporate and investment banker for more than 20 years with leading financial service organizations. I first came to Thailand in 1998 during the financial crisis and was working mainly on the restructuring side of things. In 2008, I came across this family, and for clarity's sake, I'm a professional, I'm not a family member. And they were looking to kind of reorganize. It's thankfully a pretty small family, father, mother, plus 3 kids. And they said, we're looking at this concept. And in 2008, it was very unique to Thailand. And in fact, we set up what was then one of the first single family offices. Since then, there have been kind of many family offices that have been set up. I mean, my strength was in investment banking, so it was more on the finance and investment side, though I do run the family office here. So we've been at it for 10 years now, and it's been as successful as we thought it would be.
Indeed, and we often find that there's different types of family offices. Some are formed by family members with an interest, and then of course they pursue that around areas and industries that they understand. But in your case, you've come from that larger corporate background to sort of build out their investment management side. We're going to elaborate a little bit more upon how that's structured in a moment. But ladies and gentlemen, that is often a very common practice where they see a party from the large corporate world or institution that seems to have the chemistry and also the knowledge to build out an investment portfolio, because it's very, very different from being purely an entrepreneur and a business owner, as opposed to having investment management to take care of as a task thereafter. But next, Mr. Hiranandani, sort of the same question. In about 90 seconds, just explain to us a little bit more about your background and focus and what really led to you forming a family office and the decision-making process around that.
So we co-founded the Hiranandani group with my younger brother, Surendra, and built this company for the last 35 years. He, his wife, children by his first wife, he had a child by his second wife, and I have two children, one based in Dubai, one based in London. And obviously the aspirations of the family kept on varying. And obviously this led to the thought process of setting up a family office, which would actually look at where the investments would take place in terms of diversified or safety security for some of the family members and their aspirations. And then later on, for the purposes of saying, can we look at new other businesses which the family offices could spring about and take that into it. So there were two thoughts, one in terms of the family as growing up and their aspirations, and the second, the safety and security of some of the monies which we were holding. These again changed because my brother and I, we kind of in future decided to go separate ways in terms of business. So part of the family office has also been segregated.
Indeed. And George, you're muted right now, but what led to your evolution and involvement in the family office space? You've got a very interesting story similar to Shiraz, from institutional to family office. I'd love for you to share that with us. Thank
you, Peter. I came from a background of merchant banking, commercial banking, plus some investment banking work, both in the Middle East as well as in London. And was asked in the early 90s by a very senior Saudi prince to bring his affairs under control, under some semblance of discipline. And this was a great empire. And I think in the process, and that the term family office was not known then, perhaps created one of the earliest, if not the earliest, of family offices extant. The office was divided into 3 physical presences, one in the UK to manage the real estate portfolio, which was all over the world, as all where our activities were. One in Geneva to manage the financial assets, and one in Riyadh to manage what I would call the businesses and the venture capital investments we went into. This was a vast enterprise and a very complex one. I brought into this family office a discipline that is not well understood. That's of quantity surveying, because this is one prince, one family that never stopped building, and I thought we needed that. Otherwise, it would have been, it made a lot of sense what we did by bringing it together. One of our major undertakings was to, in fact, plan for the succession,
which we're going to go into in thorough depth in a moment, George. And Seth, of course, working with Dave Pitney, you have a plethora of different families and clients, and I felt you could add some tremendous value to this discussion, because you speak to so many different people and can evaluate trends. But this is a very specialized industry, Seth. So what led you into the world of ultra high net worth individuals and family offices?
Sure. So personally, for me, as a desire, I always knew that my law practice was going to focus on working with individuals. I had no desire to assist large companies in organization. My practice, it grew one aspect out of pure necessity, which is At the core, I'm an international tax lawyer, very heavily focused on advising foreign clients on inbound investment into the US to ensure that the investments are tax efficient. And I also do outbound planning, advising US residents for their investments offshore. But in conjunction with this, that's the necessary aspect. But in conjunction with this, there's the necessity to have families be able to work with one individual who can guide them in the coordination of their wealth succession planning for all of their assets. Depending on where clients are located, you have different access to financial products, for wealth succession planning purposes, trusts, for example. So I will typically serve as a point person for a family. And with that family's vision for wealth succession in mind, I will, as the point person, work with these families to coordinate their global estate planning. So access a trust vehicle, one or more, that can be the principal product that they can use really to kind of consolidate global holdings under, so that they have peace of mind to know that the wealth succession for the next generation is going to be there and that their desires are going to be implemented for children and a number of generations on. So really it was out of a desire, for many families with assets all over the world to be able to have everything consolidated in a manner that gives them peace of mind in a structure that works. So.
Yes, indeed, as well. And what a lot of people don't understand, when a family has had that liquidity event and they're not necessarily professionally structured, or just even if they are professionally structured, there can be so many changes in tax laws and the world today with technology movement. That's why often some people opt to deal with a professional such as Seth, who's keeping up to date with all of those trends and structures going forward. Look, now what we'll look at doing is maybe summarizing a few key investment categories and sectors or assets of focus which comprise your investment portfolio. What's the decision-making process and reasoning for focusing on these investment categories and sectors? And what is the risk profile and returns you're targeting? And has this changed during the pandemic risk? Shiraz, why don't we start with you?
So traditionally, I think the patriarchs always liked hard assets. So what we've looked at is private equity investments into operating companies across various geographies. Part of my challenge when I joined was to put some structure. So we had around 60 investments, ranging from 90% equity stake to 10%. But he's always liked kind of trying to unlock value from operating assets. And we came in, we tried to consolidate, and we said, okay, let's try, other than being just a financial investor, becoming strategic. So what we look at now is investments where we add a lot of value. I have what I call a domain expert who really understands the business and who can add value to the operations of the company. Since COVID, honestly, we have not really kind of looked at investing very aggressively. What we're doing is consolidating what we have. We are waiting and watching, and hopefully, I think early next year, we'll start looking at new opportunities. We are pretty big in the Middle East, Southeast Asia, South Asia, and kind of parts of North Asia. So I think that's the geographies we normally operate in.
Mm-hmm. And if you felt that things have differentiated a little bit during the COVID period, are you not focusing as much on the stock markets and the share markets and looking more at direct opportunities? How is that sort of pivoted in any way?
Like I mentioned, we only do direct. We really don't invest in kind of listed companies where we have no control. So the whole philosophy has always been traditional private equity. Let's look at businesses that we have some control over. So what we do is we are happy to take minority stakes. We're happy to work with partners, but we do like board representation. And then we try and unlock value. It's a very old traditional private equity model, which may not work with the next generation. Right?
Yeah, and that's a very, very intriguing approach, that you've actually got the in-depth skill sets. Many family offices don't have that. But obviously it seems to your office seems to resonate a lot with the unique fingerprint of your founder, who is an entrepreneur as well, and he's built an office around that. There is a saying, ladies and gentlemen, that if I show you 100 family offices, I've literally shown you 100 family offices, meaning no two are the same. Some like to diversify, some like to focus. And this is an intriguing category for that reason. Niranjan, the same question to you. I mean, if you could just sort of elaborate upon some of the investments, categories and sectors and assets that you like as part of your family office portfolio, perhaps separate from your business activities. You know, what are the risk profile, the returns that you're seeking, and how has this sort of your investment strategy changed during pandemic risk?
So in the last 3 years, there's been a sea change in the entire thought process of the family office, simply because my brother and I kind of made our own futures separate. So the family office, which was originally aggressive to look at the new businesses, now divided the new businesses between the two families' next generation. So Surendra and his family took up some of those, and my family and the younger, my son and others took up the other businesses. So the family office has now become a very conservative investment portfolio. So it's actually taken the risk to the minimal. And originally, I would say the risk was 60-40, 60 in terms of entrepreneurship investments that were there. Today, I think the risk portfolio is down to 5 to 10%, and the rest is in secured portfolio for the family, because a lot of new investments have gone into new businesses which are growing and expected to grow in the next couple of years. Pandemic hasn't changed too much as far as we are concerned, except that the family portfolio continues to be on a safe risk position, which we decided 2 years ago after this whole division and other works took place. So it's all less risk, and it still continues to be so at the family office level. But the families themselves have gone into an entrepreneurship role. So a lot of capital investment, which was originally locked up into other investments, have been pulled out and put into these new entrepreneur properties and projects.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, yes, ladies and gentlemen, that's a perfect example, because Mr. Hiranandani has obviously a lot of business activities, particularly in the real estate sector, but the family office is obviously that separate structure for the family's private wealth, and that is clearly demonstrating a wealth preservation type of strategy in that regard, and with that separate structure. So when you're actually speaking to family offices, please differentiate between their family business activities and their family office, which is obviously a part of their investment branch, among other things. George, same sort of question. I mean, you can talk from your own perspective and also the many families that you're still advising and aligned with. What are the key categories, sectors, and assets to focus in their investment portfolio? What's the decision-making process for this? Risk profile, returns they're seeking, and how has this changed during pandemic risk?
Well, the change has been to increase uncertainty and therefore risk significantly. And that's not only the COVID risk. The COVID risk is significant and unmeasurable. But there is also layers of risk. You know, I work in the UK. There's Brexit. That is a risk. Activities in the United States are face additional risk of political division, significant political division. I'm also part of the Middle East. We face the prospect of a reduced oil price. So actually, unlike your interviewee, I wish I can go back to when I started, given the risk profile that we face now, and the lack of opportunity that I see, in fact, as a result. We're mostly in cash. We have rationalized real estate. We are interested in buying real estate, and we are in certain depressed areas. There are depressed situations. In fact, there are people under stress who offer good deals for rescue in a rescue format. Gold is interesting up to a point, of course. One faces that incredible risk of, which no one understands, of this infinite amount of money printing that's going on around the world. Will the dollar hold and the euro hold their values over the next for the next generation? I don't know. So hard assets, gold, good quality real estate, yes, and cash at the moment, waiting for opportunities.
Mm-hmm. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you've seen from the investment strategies, very, very diverse options that they've displayed here. Now, Seth, I'm going to put this next question to you because we've covered investment strategies of the investment side of family offices, but structuring is obviously your forte. And in your opinion, what are the key drivers, structures, and strategies that you apply to ensure the succession of the family offices you serve? And the next generation family members, so it ensures that they're successful. What are the values, objectives, and goals that you also have to take into consideration of the family when putting these structures in place, Seth?
Sure. So I think it's important as a preliminary matter to just implore the fact that it's very easy for a family to focus on generating wealth and diverse asset classes and business and assets all over the world. But there comes a time when you really have to consider the burden, the multiple burdens it has the potential to place on your family if you don't have some type of coordinated plan in place. My job is unfortunately to talk about incapacity and death because they're necessary aspects of life. So there comes a time when, for the benefit of your children and your grandchildren and further generations, you don't want to leave a mess for them. If your focus is just on generating wealth and running businesses, internally within companies, there may be internal succession plans in terms of board of directors, but where the wealth itself, the equity ownership will be transferred and how that will be managed and to bring the next generations in the proper manner if the patriarch or matriarch is gone or is unable to act is really the principal consideration. And I want to also say that goes hand in hand with taxes, not just from my standpoint as a US tax lawyer, but the world has changed in terms of countries with systems of worldwide taxation. In the US, we have it here based on citizenship, regardless of where you live, but with automatic exchange of information for privacy considerations. So as an example, family in Philippines, ultra high net worth family, the matriarch and patriarch have passed away. They had some estate planning. They were in the financial industry, owned a bank. And some of the children are located here in the US who have been beneficiaries of trusts outside of the US for many years. And particularly from a US standpoint, the compliance aspects of dealing with that, if you have US or UK beneficiaries down the line in your picture, if the planning isn't done in advance, this client in particular, the daughter who is in this next generation, she runs the risk of losing a substantial portion of that due to aggressive tax penalties and failures to report in the United States. So that has to be worked through. So I guess the answer is, or what I'm trying to employ is to come to a point where you recognize that there is a benefit to consolidating global holdings under some type of principle or one or more estate planning vehicles. These days, there's a huge number of jurisdictions, the US being one of the premier jurisdictions actually, for foreigners to do their estate planning in, because we have a very favorable system for foreign inbound investment to the US, but also for the most part, foreigners are free to come here and create trust products that will not impact the taxation of the assets that they own locally. It will not attract US tax if structured in a proper way. So in conjunction with this, it's not just reaching that realization and bringing in me or another consultant to help implement this type of wealth succession structure, but it's also just people knowing, what type of structuring is really available. The modern estate planning vehicles have come so far, mainly competition among jurisdictions and implementation of laws that are very flexible. But you can have within an overarching trust structure, or perhaps a private trust company that the family will implement, multiple committees, protector committees, committees focused solely on investment, committees focused solely on the distribution of wealth and liquid assets to children from trusts, and then, you know, committees, oversight committees.
So in summary, Seth.
Mhm.
So in summary, just to sort of tie that in, are there any other sort of key thoughts on the structuring?
No, you just have to be cognizant that you have an integrated plan. You don't want to have things really all over the place, because it just creates more problems, both in tax and headache for the next generation. And if you plan with everything you have in the proper way, you can bring the next generation in the way that you put into action in a thoughtful manner, doing it in advance.
Indeed. And Shiraz, I mean, sort of similar question. We'll probably keep it sort of just a short 30 to 45 seconds. How do you, or from your perspective with the family that you're involved with, is the structure and the strategy of succession shaped around the values and goals they wish to instill in the next generation?
Sure, I think that's important, but I guess the challenge you have is there are some legacy investments, right? And whether the next generation likes it, engages, like Niranjan said, they want to create their own paths, and how do you actually encourage them to go ahead and do what they'd like to do, not what they're forced to do. So I guess there is always that challenge, which is, you know, with a succession comes change, and how do you manage that change?
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
So
Go ahead.
Back to the point that there is something that they must do, and there's something that they'd like to do, and it's finding the best fit for both.
Yeah, indeed. And same question, Niranjan. Look, Shiraz makes a very good point about what they'd like to do and what should be done. How have you structured, whether it's from trusts or a family constitution or other way, if we could sort of limit it to 30 to 45 seconds, to ensure that, you know, the values, the objectives that you wish to instill is part of that new transfer of wealth?
Okay, so whatever you advise is good at a particular point of time, and that changes completely as the grandchildren grow up, or there is separation among businesses of the families and things. So what the answer to that question would be simply that you have to change the entire trust, the direction, and what you're really doing in terms of whether aggression or conservatism, depending on how the family is growing and what the aspirations of the family are, and of course the instructions of the founder. But it's a changing, moving daily target. And I think a review by the family in terms of a family council will become extremely important for the family body to really look at it from time to time. So change.
Yeah, and just building on from that as well, what role does entrepreneurship still play as part of your family office and next generation succession planning for family members? Is there also an involvement with investment management, or you're encouraging entrepreneurship? If you could, maybe 1 minute on that.
They are all encouraged to do entrepreneurship, not the family office investments. And the family office investment should be more with professionals who can guide them and lead it, because there you have more than 1 or 2 persons who are interested, while the entrepreneurship direction is probably focused on those who want to use their entrepreneurship skills in order to grow their business or the joint businesses and manage that.
Yeah, George, same question with the families that you're a part of and for your own portfolio. Does entrepreneurship still play a role, or is it steered towards investment management for the next generation?
Investment management. As family offices, investment management. That's the work of a family office. Entrepreneurship in what sense? If they want to go and build their own businesses, they'll probably be given enough money to go and do that.
Yeah, are they encouraged? Is that part of it? Yes. Yes.
That's not a problem. Everybody wants to have his children go out and try their hand at something or another, and they're willing to give them some money for that. But the core patrimoine, the core family office asset bases should be left in the hands of professionals, and as far away from actually the children as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Shiraz, same question. What role does entrepreneurship play in this wealth transfer? Is there sort of a part of it where there's a segregated amount of funds to guide the children so they can obviously go attempt their own ventures, or if they got to do it on their own?
Absolutely. I think they cut their teeth by trying to be entrepreneurs. They kind of understand how difficult it is to earn money in the real world, but they do have a safety net to fall back on, which makes it really comfortable for them. So I would guess, like the other two panelists said, yeah, it's investment management for the family office, but do encourage the next gen to go out on their own and try.
Yeah.
Nothing like it.
Indeed. And Seth as well, look, you're obviously a professional and with a preeminent firm on the structuring, so you would be definitely up on this more than most. I mean, what role has technology played in this process to date for you to more effectively do your job and for the family office succession and integration? Do you foresee the role of NextGens and technological advancement will play in directing that succession going forward?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, what we're doing right now, it's much easier to have access with you know, and meet with individuals all over the world. But to link that kind of back to the last point, also of incentivizing the next generation, and my prior point of having thoughtful planning in advance, it's really important to consider, you know, how flexible, for example, a trust structure is, where something that wealth will be consolidated when held for the benefit of the next generation after the matriarch and patriarch are gone. So, you know, being able to bring the family together and implement the principal's wishes after they're deceased, and incentivize families and children, you know, to start businesses of their own. It's really important to just consider the flexibility that's available for you to plan and for your children after you're gone, by virtue of being able to work with a team of advisors, professional advisors, in a manner like we're doing right now. It can be done quite efficiently. So, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. And look, separate from pure investment activities and objectives, how are the family involved in socially responsible objectives such as social impact investments, ESG, philanthropy, and other areas uniquely important and considered and agreed upon and execute within the family? Shiraz?
So I think for us, it's been key and it remains quite important. Whenever we look at any investment, we do look at the social impact, and it's not something new. It's something we've always done. We are very mindful of what we do. And I think the next gen is even more mindful, and they are more kind of familiar with philanthropy. So they would all, in some form or fashion, like to get involved and do their bit. So we are quite active in both the ESG side as well as the philanthropy side, and we encourage it quite actively.
Yeah, Niranjan, same question.
Yeah, philanthropy continues to come from the corporate side, not from the family office as at present. But the future role of the family office will also include philanthropy, especially to sustain the projects which have already been done through philanthropy in terms of hospitals, schools, colleges, skill development centers. All these are there, which are being developed through the corporate side at present and not really from the family office. But the future to maintain those and the deficits, if any, in order to sustain those projects will be the responsibility of the family office.
Yes, and just elaborating upon that, that's philanthropy. What about social impact as an investment, where you're investing for profit, but also to do a social good?
Oh, that's being done on a continuing basis, but it's opportunistic, not a kind of a mandate which is taking place. So those are done on opportunistic basis to pick up objectives which are chosen by the family and then given in terms of charity.
Yeah, and George, I'll put this one to you because you're seeing this every day, and this is part of the reason why you're brought in as a partner or an advisor. What do you feel government agencies, project donors, entrepreneurs, asset managers need to do to capture your attention or that of the next generation when presenting a for-profit or social impact investment to any of the families that you're advising?
Basically, show us results, show us projects that make sense. To my mind, a project, generally speaking, that makes sense on a business point of view, really actually works for the betterment of the immediate community, at least. I certainly, just to go to the earlier question for a second, I certainly would avoid doing investments that have socially deplorable effects. So let's get that out of the discussion and concentrate on investments that do some good from a business point of view, do some good from a social point of view, if at all possible. But in fact, the first item normally is sufficient in and of itself. Governments have a big role. They could come in and perhaps support the investment a bit. So show us some support and show us some results and show us some good ideas. There aren't very many.
Yeah. And Seth, I mean, what are your perspectives on future trends that you think are going to impact family offices, NextGens, particularly over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, it's something I said before. It's more expansive taxation, but in addition to taxation, automatic exchange of information, financial information between companies, between countries. I implore principals to think of where your children and your grandchildren live, and think of the impacts, and not only where they live, where your assets are located as well, but think of the impacts that your succession planning and your succession vehicles will have on your children and on your grandchildren, and the financial and reporting obligations they will have. Because the worst thing that you would want to find yourself in is them being in a situation where they're facing penalties from a revenue authority for something that they really they were completely innocent in. So you have to be thoughtful of the direction that really the globe is going in terms of forcing automatic disclosure of beneficial ownership and interests and trusts, and just plan for that.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And now look, if we could limit this to sort of 30 to 45 seconds for each of our panelists here. I mean, what is one special insight just for our audience here at AIM Congress? And if you had to pick one or maximum two investments, they can be in any geographic location, any sector, anywhere in the world, that you feel is going to be a successful investment over the coming 5 to 10 years, what do you feel that would be? Which geographic location, which sector, and what's your reason for this? Niranjan, your hot tip on 1 to 2 investments you think are a great opportunity.
I think real estate has been quite subdued in the last couple of years in India, and there is a lot of opportunity to invest into it. There are residential and commercial opportunities. There are also REIT investments which are looking very attractive at this point of time into the Indian REIT market. And I think a combination of this is really going to look positive in the next couple of years.
Shiraz, same question. What do you think are one, maximum two investments that are going to be a tremendous opportunity over the coming 5 to 10 years?
Sure, a personal view. In the listed space, I certainly would not be chasing the growth stocks in the US right now. I think they're fully priced and kind of ready to correct. On the private space, I think we are seeing increasingly, kind of given geopolitical conditions as well as COVID, manufacturing moving towards Asia and more kind of supply chain issues. So I would think setting up facilities in countries like Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Myanmar would be interesting and would provide a lot of opportunity. So that's something we are focusing on.
George, same question. I would say go to areas that you understand and you know, and do things that you understand and you know. If you want to be general about it, I think the sector I'd like to see some work done in, and I think would be profitable, would be in the environmental section. And that applies anywhere in the world. And environmentally, something to contribute to the environment, which is degrading at a tremendous rate.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And look, Seth, from the families that you're advising on a daily basis, what do you find as far as the legacy they're wishing to instill or leave behind for the community and future generations of the family?
Every family is different, but kind of what I've been saying all along. It's important to have a thoughtful plan that you implement the proper way, and do your planning, do the planning properly, and don't leave the cleanup mess for the next generation and for the advisors involved. It's really for the benefit of your children and your grandchildren. These days, I mentioned before, wealth succession vehicles such as trusts are so extraordinarily flexible that you could pretty much implement whatever your desires are and whatever your desires for your children are and how you want to bring them in over time, even during the lifetime of the matriarch and patriarch. So just make your plan thoughtful and consolidated, especially when you're dealing with a global family.
Yeah. Similar question, Shiraz. I mean, in roughly 30 to 45 seconds, what do you feel is the legacy that your family office that you represent is wishing to instill and leave behind for the community and future generations of the family?
I think the legacy itself is quite important. And then, of course, you want it to be sustainable. So you want it to be kind of manageable in a correct way. You want people to kind of look up and say, okay, it's a well-run, respectable company. And I think that's something that guides us all the time.
Mm-hmm. Same question, Niranjan. What is the legacy that you'd be looking to leave behind in the succession from one generation to the next?
Not miss out on opportunities while trying to be very, neither be too conservative nor too aggressive. See that the safety of the net is kept, but still do not kind of prevent opportunities from going away. And especially those who are capable within the family should be looked after in order to have some investments go to them too.
George, again, same question from your own perspective and the families that you're advising. What's the legacy that you feel you wish to instill or they wish to instill and leave behind for the community and future generations of the family?
First, at the risk of repetition, I want them you need to instill into them the knowledge that money is not easy to make. And from what I see around, the other virtue you really want to instill into them is the virtue of humility. Sorry about this. Sorry about that. So humility, yes, there is a lot of arrogance around in the next generation, and that tends to be very destructive.
Yeah, indeed, yes. As they say, it can be shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. One makes it, one burns through some of it, and then it's often depleted by the third. But look, ladies and gentlemen, we've summarized with these different family offices how they're in a position of structuring their next generation wealth transfer, which is going to again be a very, very important subject, with one study saying there'll be a 30 trillion transfer, another saying there'll be a 60 trillion plus transfer over the coming generation from one category to the next. Look, to conclude, gentlemen, is there anything you feel is missing from the conversation, or are there any key takeaways or final thoughts you'd like to share with the audience that you feel are important? Shiraz?
There's nothing from my side, to be honest.
Niranjan?
No great ideas and no new shakes, but the point is that each person and each family has so many idiosyncrasies that you need to look after, that I think the advisors really have to do a great balancing act. So though the structures look important, but the idiosyncrasies of what the family needs and aspirations have to be balanced equally.
Yeah. Seth, same question. Is there anything you're feeling is missing from the conversation, key takeaways, or anything you'd like to share with the audience as a final comment?
Just to reiterate something I said, planning for something, and Niranjan alluded to it too, your plan and your goals and the dynamic of your family will change over time. So your wealth succession plan is something that you must revisit. It must be a living creature throughout the lifetime of the principals. But the point I wanted to make also that I've already said is, because a structure, a wealth succession vehicle may work from your perspective as the matriarch or the patriarch, you would be doing a huge service to your children and your grandchildren to also simultaneously in the implementation of your planning, consider where they're located and how they're going to be impacted by what you've implemented once you're gone.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant, thank you. And final words, George, anything you feel is missing from the conversation in 30 seconds you'd like to share?
Not at all. I want to repeat the word plan and planning. And I think once that's done and properly done with the right lawyers and in the right jurisdictions I think then you can take some concrete steps in ensuring a proper succession. And I think those are really actually the difficult steps that follow the planning.
Well, thank you very much, George, for those comments, and also our other distinguished panelists. Look, in summary, ladies and gentlemen, you've gained a plethora of unique and insightful perspectives from several single-family offices and world-class experts from very diverse backgrounds from around the world. We've gained a greater insight into the present role, structure, succession planning of the patriarchal generation, areas they wish to cultivate into the next generation as part of the wealth transfer, the pivotal role next generations play now and into the future in technology, social impact, and other objectives of the family office, that special insight of one specific investment in the entire world each investor is personally most excited by, and of course the legacy each family wishes to instill and leave behind for the community and future generations of the family. We strongly encourage all of our distinguished audience to take action with the tremendous knowledge and insights provided today, and welcome interactivity and collaboration, which has made AIM Congress so successful over the years. Therefore, for any further thoughts or questions, please don't hesitate. Feel welcome to reach out to AIM Congress directly via their website and contact details which you have. Myself via email on this subject at inquiries with an E at Aetos Investments, that's AETOS investments.com, inquiries at aetosinvestments.com, via LinkedIn at Peter J R Aylwin, or our website shortly, which is presently being revamped at www.aetosinvestments.com, or any of our distinguished panelists via their social media and details which has been provided with their bios. This concludes the Next Generation Succession and Transfer of Family Wealth Virtual Roundtable. I thank our distinguished panelists, the dedicated staff of AIM Congress, and the UAE Ministry of Economy, and particularly, of course, conference producer Prashant Odrani for his tremendous dedication, commitment to excellence that has made this engaging family office virtual roundtable possible. Ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests, I wish you great prosperity, safety, and during these uncertain times, and a most exciting and enjoyable rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What a fantastic panel. We heard some excellent comments and insights from our speakers. Thank you all, our speakers, for joining us today. We welcome our audience to interact with each other on our chat wall. Please also do not forget to tag us on our social media handles with the hashtag AIMDigital.